Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. I have been a summer camp director for more than 30 years. And over those years, one of my favorite things has been training our counselors with the skills they need to be positive adult mentors for our campers. I love that much of what we do at camp also applies to parenting, and that's why I started Sunshine Parenting. I share ideas, stories, and tips to help parents and anyone else who works with young people raise competent, kind, optimistic kids. I believe that together we can raise a generation of happy, connected kids who bring positive changes to the world. In this episode of the podcast, I'm talking with Jessica Alexander, co-author of The Danish Way of Parenting, What the Happiest People in the World Know About Raising Confident, Capable Kids. I interviewed Jessica over a year ago and am just now getting around to publishing this podcast. A word I learned for the first time from Jessica, hygge, has now become mainstream. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Tell me what you find you're kind of spending the most time talking about from your book. Which topic?
Well, I have actually talked a lot about play, but I think that's mainly because it's the first chapter in the book. And then hygge, I try to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about almost everything in the book, but I do find in a lot of my interviews I have ended up talking quite a bit about play, and empathy because they're in the beginning of the book.
Exactly. Well, I really liked both of those sections. I really was interested. Well, obviously, all of it really resonated with me. I actually run a children's summer camp, and I don't know if you have any. Do you have any experience with summer camps in America?
I went to some.
Okay. Because some of the things that struck me were that it's a lot of the things we do at camp are very similar to the topics you cover in your book.
Yes.
And I think that's really how do you pronounce it? Hygge? Hygge. Okay.
Yeah.
Camp is there's just a lot of, gathering around the campfire to talk and hanging out in hammocks and just more of that. And kids do get so much less of that, it seems like. I was reading and I was thinking about my own family and how everyone just kind of goes to their own corner. I have these two teenage boys at home, and how just really it's challenging to go in our individualistic culture. Besides our family dinner, it's hard sometimes to find things that everybody will do together. But I liked how you frame it where we just decide that it's for the greater good of the family. What are we going to do? I like that a lot. What are some of the things that you do with your family for that?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, but first let me say that I think the summer camp is an amazing place to implement the Danish way. Mm-hmm. I think it's like you're just saying, there are so many things that I can remember and I can imagine at a camp, which are very, unless it's a camp that becomes uber competitive and, kids are enrolled in too many things. I think it's a great mirror of this kind of Danish style. Because even they have a lot of kindergartens. I don't know if you've heard about forest kindergartens.
I've seen videos where they just are playing outside and climbing trees, and they've had a few of those. I think in Northern California there's one now. Oh, it's just fabulous. It's what all kids should be doing.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, in terms of hygge, what I've done with my family is in the book. You can find this hygge oath, and that we wrote because it was sort of it includes all the kind of unspoken rules of hygge,
right?
And it gives you this opportunity to talk about it with your family or whoever you're hyggeing with before you do it, and you define the time when you're going to do it. So for example, with my family, we chose a barbecue or a dinner. And we kind of talked about what the rules were. Mm-hmm. And then, and when that it's time limited, it's much easier to focus on we time rather than me time.
Okay.
And because I have to say, in my family, a lot of families, we have these kinds of, routine. I don't know if routine is the right word, but these sort of patterns we get into about what we talk about, and sometimes these can be, negative or drama or, these kinds of things. And what Hygge is doing, if you remember from the chapter, it's about leaving the drama at the door. Mm-hmm. And the way I describe it, it's like a safe psychological space that you enter into. So it should be a place where nobody has to put their guard up. So that means no complaining, no negativity, no gossiping, no bragging. You leave your work stress, all those kinds of things that could make someone feel, on the defensive.
Right.
That's not in the Hygge space.
Right.
So what you do instead is you can play games, you can play cards, you talk about good memories together. You help out so that nobody gets stuck doing all the work. No, obviously you try to have no technology. And what's interesting about it is at first it can feel a little weird because, it's different than what you're used to doing. But it is so lovely and it's so worth it. I've tried it numerous times with my family. Now it's starting to become natural for us, which is great.
Right.
And it's my kids that really benefit from it, because they love this drama-free time with us. And it feels good. It's such a recharger of, your heart in a way, to have this sacred time. Because we have every other time to complain about our problems. Or talk about Aunt Bessie or whatever. But in that time, that sort of defined moment, you create, I call it we-fulness. So it's not mindfulness, it's we-fulness.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good word for it.
And it's something that's so simple, but with just that little effort and awareness, it really has a really strong effect. And like I said, I was doing it for years. I was exposed to it for years in Denmark, but I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Right.
Okay. Why are they able to do this?
Right.
And then I realized it's because they grow up doing it and they sort of know the rules intrinsically.
Right. So you extracted what they were. You kind of analyzed and talked to them and figured out, okay, so what is all this stuff that everybody just knows to do? And is it once a week? Is it every night at dinner? What is the typical Danish way of doing it?
Well, the Danes do it a lot. I mean, it is in their vocabulary. It is. Okay. You cannot have a conversation and not hear the word hygge. So I do think it's a major reason why they're so happy, because they value this social connectedness so much. And, we know from research that's way more powerful than money or anything else to feel connected, right?
Yes.
So it's just a huge value for them. So they can do it regularly, several times a week. And they, like I said, it's so much a part of their culture that they don't think about it. They don't think that these rules exist. I'm conceptualize them for us as Americans or other cultures, to understand it. But I, with my family, we try to do it, once in a while. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go crazy.
Right.
Just start slowly. And like I said, what's great about it is it becomes more natural.
I was thinking a lot about, I think what they talk about a lot here is family dinner and how important that is. And it a little bit reminded me of this, of, having your kids help you cook dinner and then having, a kind of a conversation. We do some stuff we do at camp at family dinner where we all share our high of the day or something we're grateful for. There's some kind of organized sharing or conversation. And then, everybody helps clean up. So I was kind of thinking about that as it's sort of that's been kind of in the past, the American tradition was trying to your family have dinner together, but I think that's even been lost a lot in America with the schedules of our kids and everything. And so I think there's a lot of families who really don't have any together time here.
Right. And, so it like I said, it doesn't have to be, it can be, let's say you choose a dinner on the weekend or you choose a picnic or you choose a lunch. And the key is that, it's not about, you don't have to talk about it. It shouldn't be anything controversial, right? It should really be being able to be together again in this nice space. And what we have to get over is sometimes I think it can feel almost superficial because we're kind of used to going into debates or, discussions. But I think what we don't realize is that can subtly make us put our guard up.
Yes.
So that's not connecting.
Right.
So that's something I think people should be aware of. It may feel a little bit superficial, but once you get beyond that, you'll find it's really lovely to be together in that drama-free space.
Yeah, I love that. So how old are your kids now?
7 and 4.
Oh, okay. So they're still pretty little.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you been, you live in Italy?
Yes.
So have you raised your kids completely? Have you been in Denmark or in Italy or both, or how does that work?
Yeah, I lived in Scandinavia. I lived in Oslo, and I've been in Denmark, my whole marriage with my husband. I remember we're there like 6 times a year.
Okay.
And we have we're involved in Danish business. And I have to say, this is going to sound funny, but I like literally worshipped this. I saw in Denmark a long time ago how well behaved the kids were and how happy the kids were. And I was really struck by it. And I just watched it over the years, and I realized something was going on in Denmark. And so when my daughter was born, despite I read so many parenting books, but I found myself always going to my Danish family and friends, and I then suddenly, without realizing it, it really became my, go-to everything. I really preferred this Danish way. And when one day I read the happiness report, I was reading the newspaper and I found out that they had been voted the happiest people in the world for 40 years in a row.
Right.
And then I was like, oh my God, it's the parenting.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it is. I think, is it, I have some Swedish friends, and some of the things that you were talking about in your book rung true for me. They do a lot of that singing, like get together for the holidays. Yeah. And I thought of them, and they get this pig every Christmas, and they have a whole bunch of friends over, and they sing a lot. And I thought, I wonder if this is this kind of that whole Scandinavian way?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I also lived in Norway. I'm very familiar with Scandinavia. There's so many, like Scandinavia in general, like also they're talking a lot about Finland now and play in the schools. They're all they're brothers, right?
Right.
It's a group of brothers. There's a lot of similarities. The word hygge doesn't exist in Swedish and Norwegian, which I think is really interesting. It is a very Danish word, but they totally hygge in Norway and Sweden, and Finland,
right?
And yeah, singing is very hyggelig. I didn't mention it because I'm not sure all Americans are quite ready for singing, but there is a lot of singing, and that's an example of this weefulness, because it's a way where it's super connecting when you start singing together. It sounds silly, but
that's the camp way. This is why we sing so much at camp. We sing tons of songs at camp, silly songs and funny songs and whatever, and people all join in from our oldest to our youngest, and it's a huge happiness booster. Singing and dancing and all that is really something that is
super hyggelig, as they would say.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But it's a little. What about the kids and their phones and whatnot? Are you finding that they are better there about they actually put them down during these times of hygge?
Obviously, Denmark also struggles with, the phones and stuff like that. It's not that they're immune to it, but there is an awareness from the kids, which has always surprised me and amazed me. That kids really do try to help out, because they know they mirror us. When this becomes part of your cultural tradition, they pick it up.
Right.
So it's kind of an understood thing. If it's like a real hygge thing and the family is there, the kids know, especially for certain periods of time, the phones go away.
Right.
And they're really good at helping out with the other kids. That's something I notice a lot in Denmark, which is so nice. It's this teamwork idea that obviously we help with the food, but then also the kids really help with the different ages of playing together.
Do they also, in the schools, is it more together than it is in America? Because you know how we segregate by age group so much in America? Is that the same? Do they do the same kind of segregation there, or do they have different groupings of students?
No, it is. They are separated by age, but there is definitely more togetherness in the schools, because even in the schools, they hygge.
That's amazing. How do they do that at school?
So there's something, I just wrote an article about this in Salon, actually. There's something called Klassenstimme, which it means the class hour, the classes hour.
Okay.
They do this from age 6 to 16. And what it is 1 hour a week or a little bit more. The class comes together to talk about any problems anybody's been having, or if there's any issues, or if there's nothing, they just get together to have a hyggelig time. But it's a way, it's building empathy as well, because it's a way for them to sort of talk to each other and hear, what other people's experiences are in the class. And the teacher is actually trained to make sure that everybody feels listened to and feels heard. And then there's even a cake that has its own recipe called the Klassenstimme cake.
Oh my gosh!
So so each week somebody takes turns bringing in this cake or something else to eat that's hyggelig.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the podcast. For links and information about what we talked about, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 24. For this episode, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Jessica Alexander from the book, The Danish Way of Parenting. Empathic teenagers are shown to be more successful because they are more purpose-driven than their more narcissistic counterparts. And if you think about it, it all makes sense. Successful people don't operate alone. Each of us needs the support of others in order to achieve positive results in our lives. Maybe by focusing on actively teaching empathy to our children, as they do in Denmark, we will make happier adults in the future.